That Friday night was the most profound and indelible experience of my life. The residence was exceptionally tranquil, evoking a unique sensation of serenity inside me. I was fatigued from an arduous week and only want rest. As I reclined, I believed that nothing could disrupt the tranquility of the night. I have been a single mother for 8 years following my divorce. My ex-husband and I did not have a detrimental relationship. We just drifted apart. Raising my son Ryan independently was the most gratifying and demanding endeavor I have ever undertaken. He embodied everything qualities I valued: intelligence, humor, and kindness. However, it was challenging to fulfill the roles of both mother and father. That night, I was so fatigued that I scarcely had the energy to don my pajamas before collapsing into bed. The residence was devoid of sound. Ryan had retired to bed many hours prior after engaging in video games and completing his schoolwork. At last, I experienced a minute of alone in my chamber. The light illuminated the delicate, curved drapes, projecting gentle shadows upon the walls. I nestled beneath the blanket, relishing the warmth and allowing my thoughts to drift. Life has recently been tranquil, a welcome contrast following a challenging year. Ryan and I have endured several challenges after his father departed. However, we have established a fulfilling life together, despite Ryan now being over 20 years old. We remained rather close. He consistently shown compassion and consideration. I occasionally feared that he assumed excessive responsibility for his age. I grinned while reflecting about him. His kindness made me feel fortunate to have him in my life. However, this evening I was excessively fatigued to contemplate. I felt lethargic and drowsy. I then heard a gentle rap on my bedroom door. I roused somewhat, supposing it to be an aspect of a dream. However, the knock resounded softly once again, and I was completely alert. "Mother?" Daniel's voice was subdued, yet it sufficed to rouse me from sleep. I blinked, attempting to concentrate on the door. I discerned Daniel's silhouette in the little illumination emanating from the corridor. I sat upright, endeavoring to fully rouse myself. "Daniel, what is the matter?" I inquired, my voice still drowsy. He hesitated before entering the room and gently closed the door behind him. "He seems hesitant about entering." I was unable to sleep," he remarked, averting his gaze while standing beside my bed. I became concerned as it was evident that something troubled him following the divorce. Ryan occasionally has difficulty sleeping, however, he hardly discussed it. I saw that his father's departure had affected him more profoundly than he revealed, and this evening I noticed the sorrow in his eyes. "Approach," I urged gently, gesturing to the vacant area beside me on the bed. "You may reside with me this evening if you choose." After a few hesitation, he approached and reclined next to me. He lay on his side, oriented towards me, and I saw his fatigued appearance in the subdued illumination. He appeared to be vulnerable, an atypical characteristic for him. "Would you like to discuss it?" I inquired softly. Ryan shook his head, his dark hair cascading over his eyes. "No, I only want proximity to you." My heart experienced warmth. It had been some time since Ryan desired to be near me in this manner, reminiscent of his youth. I extended my hand and swept his hair from his forehead, smiled at him. "It is acceptable," I murmured, placing my hand on his shoulder. "You may remain for as long as necessary." He returned the smile, however I discerned an underlying concern that he was reluctant to address. I did not inquire about it. I reclined, covered us with the blanket, and let the silence to provide solace. We reclined there momentarily, savoring the tranquility. Daniel's respiration diminished, leading me to believe he had succumbed to slumber. Yet, he thereafter spoke words in a hushed tone. I could scarcely hear him. "Mother, do you ever long for him?" His inquiry astonished me, although I recognized he was referring about his father. I had evaded that question for years, uncertain of how to respond. "I occasionally do," I confessed softly, however our relationship was strained. Daniel, although he nodded, it was evident that he sought further information. "Do you ever contemplate how circumstances may have varied?" he inquired. I exhaled, reflecting on previous regrets. "Nonetheless, we cannot alter the past." We must progress. Ryan gazed downward, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. I ponder whether I might have acted differently, perhaps by improving my performance. His remarks wounded my heart. I sat upright and turned to confront him. Daniel, this was not your responsibility. You did not commit any errors. I spoke earnestly. He averted his gaze, his speech barely audible. At times, it seems that had I been more exemplary, perhaps my father would not have departed. I wept and embraced him fervently. He hesitated momentarily, but then embraced me, pressing his face against my shoulder. Daniel, heed my words, I implored, my voice trembling. Your father made his own decisions. It was unrelated to you. It was his choice, and it was never your obligation. You have consistently exceeded my expectations. Daniel, I murmured, my tone imbued with affection and solace. You are my everything. He leaned into my shoulder, yet I could still see the tightness within him, the burden of years of unexpressed anguish and remorse. We embraced tightly, the stillness surrounding us serving as a soothing salve. His body gradually relaxed, and his breathing deepened as he succumbed to sleep. While he slept soundly beside me, my mind was agitated, with thoughts and memories spinning in the obscurity. We had both suffered significantly, yet inside the serene solace of that mutual hug, an unforeseen emotion awakened within me, a feeling I could not really identify. It was a feeling that permeated my chest, a connection that seemed more profound and intimate than the typical tie between a mother and her son. I attempted to disregard it, to concentrate on the cadence of his breathing, yet the sensation endured, an incessant murmur that would not be overlooked. The morning came abruptly, the warm light of dawn illuminating the chamber in delicate shades. Ryan slumbered peacefully alongside me, his expression tranquil and at ease, the strain of the prior night seemingly erased. I observed him briefly, my heart brimming with affection and pride. Nevertheless, that foreign sensation persisted, a continual undercurrent beneath the surface of my maternal devotion. I quietly exited the bed to avoid disturbing him and proceeded downstairs to start breakfast. The habitual act of cooking provided a semblance of normalcy, however my mind persistently reverted to our nocturnal discourse. Ryan had always been sensitive, but I had not comprehended the degree to which he had internalized his father's absence. The shame he bore burdened my heart significantly, a weight I desired to relieve. However, it was not just the deed that occupied my thoughts, but the manner in which he had gazed at me. The vulnerability in his eyes and the unarticulated yearning for something more, along with my honest admission of the warmth experienced while holding him, had awakened a profound connection inside me that transcended our familial responsibilities. I endeavored to dismiss the notion, reminding myself that he was my kid, yet the sensation endured, a relentless murmur that would not be easily quelled. Ryan awoke from his sleep, his hair disheveled, his tall, slender physique still reflecting the remnants of youth. However, there was a discernible maturity in his eyes, suggesting the man he was becoming into. I greeted him with a kind grin, attempting to conceal the residual feelings from the previous night. "Good morning, slumber," I remarked, setting a plate of pancakes in front of him. He whispered, "Morning," as he settled into his chair and started his meal. We dined in tranquil peace. The early light illuminated the kitchen with a pleasant radiance. His stare periodically lingered on me, although I chose not to address the subject of the previous night. He appeared more relaxed and authentic, and I was reluctant to disturb the delicate tranquility we had finally established, which interrupted the stillness. "I appreciate your efforts last night, Mother." I required that. His susceptibility surprised me. "There is no necessity for you to express gratitude towards me. Daniel, I will consistently support you regardless of the circumstances." He acquiesced, however his stare remained directed at me, a tacit inquiry suspended in the atmosphere. I was uncertain about how to react and manage the nuanced change in our connection. His eyes exhibited a novel intensity, a need for a connection that surpassed conventional maternal and filial bounds, and one aspect of myself, hitherto unacknowledged, resonated with it as well. Following breakfast, He remained at the counter, his fingertips delineating designs on the surface. "Do you ever contemplate the possibility of alternative outcomes?" he inquired softly, his tone laden with unexpressed sentiments. I exhaled, the burden of previous remorse enveloping me. Although my response may have been kind, we cannot alter the past. Our only course of action is to endeavor to progress. Ryan nodded, his attention directed on his fidgeting fingers. At times, I contemplate whether I could have performed more effectively, you understand? His speech was scarcely audible, saturated with remorse and self-blame. His words penetrated my heart, compelling me to reach out to him. I placed a hand on his shoulder, enveloping him in a kind embrace. "Daniel, you have not committed any errors." I told him that none of this was his fault. My voice laden with emotion, he averted his gaze, his speech scarcely discernible. At times, it seems that had I been more exemplary, perhaps my father would not have departed. Emotion surged within me as I embraced him firmly, drawing him nearer. He hesitated briefly, then acquiesced to the embrace, concealing his face in my shoulder. "Daniel, heed my words," I asserted, my tone resolute. "Your father's decisions were his own. You are, and have always been, more than sufficient. His departure was unrelated to you." He nodded slowly, his body softening into mine, the tightness in his shoulders gradually dissipating as he conformed to the hug. I experienced that unusual emotion surge within me once more, a blend of relief, tenderness, and an irrefutable sense of connection. The relationship between us, previously characterized by the roles of mother and son, appeared to be transforming, growing into an unfamiliar dynamic that neither of us comprehended entirely, yet both sensed intuitively. At present, I embraced him tightly, allowing the moment to endure without inquiries or clarifications. I was uncertain about the direction of this newfound intimacy, yet I saw that our familiar existence was transforming, and this was only the inception. While lying in the darkness, surrounded by the warmth of my son's embrace, a deep understanding overcame me. The fragile equilibrium of our connection was altering, poised on the brink of something novel and unexplored. A surge of fear enveloped me, accompanied by a hint of confusion over the implications of this transition for us. Amidst the trepidation, there existed an unmistakable feeling of expectation, an acknowledgement that this was simply the start of an expedition into the unfamiliar. Dawn approached quietly as the delicate rays of sunshine filtered through the drapes, awakening me from sleep. Ryan slumbered tranquilly, his countenance calm and untroubled, the tribulations of the preceding night seemingly erased. I observed him briefly, my heart expanding with a recognizable parental affection. However, behind that familiar fondness, an indistinct current surged, a feeling I could not really articulate. The same odd sensation that had lingered at the periphery of my consciousness the previous night both captivated and worried me. I quietly exited the bed to avoid waking him and proceeded downstairs to engage in the customary breakfast preparation. While I stood at the stove frying pancakes with skillful dexterity, my thoughts wandered back to our nocturnal dialogue. Ryan had always been a sensitive individual, although I had not comprehended the extent of his psychological turmoil. The burden of his father's absence and the remorse he concealed for an extended period now profoundly affected me. However, there was additional complexity involved. His manner shifted as he sought consolation in my embrace, expressing a need for intimacy that surpassed conventional mother-son limits. Moreover, if I were truthful with myself, I had also experienced it, a warmth that enveloped me when I held him, a solace that beyond mother instinct. I dismissed the notion, concentrating on the work at hand. "He is only a boy," I reassured myself. "Your offspring." However, the sensation persisted, an unrelenting murmur that would not be subdued. Ryan eventually awoke, pushing the drowsiness from his eyes. His hair disheveled, he embodied young innocence, yet his glance revealed a nascent maturity, suggesting the man he was becoming into. I greeted him with a kind grin, striving to conceal the residual feelings from the previous night. "Good morning, sleepyhead," I announced, setting a plate of golden pancakes in front of him. he whispered, mourning, as he settled into his chair and enthusiastically consumed his meal. We dined in tranquil calm, the early sunlight enveloping the kitchen in a pleasant radiance. I sensed his gaze upon me intermittently, yet I stayed mute, unprepared to explore the intricacies of the prior night's disclosures. He appeared more relaxed and authentic, and I was reluctant to disturb the delicate tranquility we had finally achieved. His voice infused with appreciation. I appreciate your assistance last night, Mother. I required that. His susceptibility astonished me. There is no necessity for you to express gratitude towards me. Daniel was the first to provide reassurance. I will consistently support you regardless of the circumstances. He nodded, yet his stare remained, a silent inquiry reflected in his eyes, mirroring the unexpressed feelings I had been contending with. His eyes have a profundity and intensity that beyond the conventional comfort of our mother-son relationship. The day progressed without incident. Ryan withdrew to his room, engrossed in homework and video games, while I occupied myself with household tasks. Nonetheless, the dynamic between us had imperceptibly altered. The change was intangible, marked by a subtle tension and an unvoiced recognition of the profound connection that developed as day turned to twilight. I reflected about Daniel's evolution from boyhood to early adulthood and the intimacy we experienced the previous night. Upon reflection, I saw that my sentiments for him had transformed, surpassing the confines of mother affection. That evening, following dinner, we reclined on the couch to see a film. The space was poorly illuminated, with the flickering pictures on the screen projecting moving shadows onto the walls. We remained largely silent, satisfied in one another's company. As the film advanced, I became distinctly conscious of his closeness, particularly how his arm grazed mine with every slight movement. My pulse raced as I attempted to concentrate on the film, yet the tension between us was obvious, a silent symphony of unexpressed emotions. Midway through the film, Ryan inched closer, his arm making contact with me. This time, he remained still. The heat of his skin on mine elicited a tremor of consciousness within me. I looked at him, and our gazes intersected. His stare exhibited a renewed intensity, mirroring the feelings I had endeavored to hide during the day. Instinctively, I extended my hand and grasped his, our fingers interlacing. He did not withdraw, rather, he gently squeezed my hand, his thumb painting a deliberate circle on my skin. This modest act elicited a flutter in my heart, a feeling both recognizable and thrillingly novel. We remained in that position for some time, hands intertwined in the subdued illumination, a quiet acknowledgement of the evolving nature of our connection. It was a pivotal moment, an instance of implicit comprehension that beyond the confines of our familial responsibilities. I was uncertain about the future, although I saw that circumstances were evolving and Dan had transcended his role as merely my son. He was an entity beyond categorization, a someone for whom I harbored profound affection that beyond classification. The film concluded, however, we stayed on the couch, oblivious to the rolling credits. I rested my head on his shoulder, sensing the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest as he inhaled and exhaled. It was a minor gesture, yet it seemed deeply personal, a tacit recognition of the burgeoning relationship between us. Mom, Ryan mumbled, his voice scarcely audible. I am genuinely pleased that you are present. His remarks, uncomplicated yet significant, resonated with the feelings in my own heart. I was pleased by his presence as well, appreciative of this unforeseen intimacy. The newly discovered intimacy was simultaneously daunting and exciting as I reclined in the darkness, engulfed by the warmth of my son's embrace. A significant epiphany enveloped me. The fragile equilibrium of our connection was altering, poised on the brink of the unfamiliar and unexplored. A surge of worry enveloped me, a hint of uncertainty over the implications of this transition for us. Despite the trepidation, an unmistakable sense of expectation prevailed, acknowledging that this was only the start of an expedition into the unfamiliar. Dawn approached quietly as delicate rays of sunshine filtered through the drapes, awakening me from sleep. Ryan slumbered tranquilly, his countenance calm and untroubled, the tribulations of the preceding night apparently overlooked. I observed him briefly, my heart bursting with a familiar maternal emotion. Nevertheless, behind that well-recognized sentiment, an indistinct sense emerged. The same odd sensation that had lingered at the periphery of my consciousness the previous night, evoking both fascination and unease. I quietly exited the bed to avoid waking him and proceeded downstairs to engage in the customary breakfast preparation. While I stood at the stove skillfully flipping pancakes, my thoughts wandered to our late-night discussion. Ryan had always been a sensitive individual, although I had not comprehended the extent of his mental turmoil over the burden of his father's absence. The remorse he concealed, a long-held secret, now burdened my heart significantly. However, there was more to it than that. His manner changed as he sought comfort in my embrace, expressing a need for intimacy that surpassed conventional mother-son limits. Upon introspection, I also experienced a warmth that enveloped me when I held him, a solace that beyond mere mother instinct. I dismissed the notion, concentrating on the work at hand. Heck is only a boy. I recalled your boy, yet the sensation persisted, an unyielding murmur that would not be quelled. Ryan eventually awoke from his nap, shaking the sleep from his eyes, his hair disheveled, embodying young innocence. Nevertheless, his glance exhibited a greater maturity, suggesting the man he was evolving into. I greeted him with a kind grin, striving to conceal the residual feelings from the previous night. "Good morning, slumber," I announced, setting a plate of golden pancakes in front of him. He whispered, "Morning," as he settled into his chair and enthusiastically consumed his meal. We dined in tranquil calm, the early sunshine enveloping the kitchen in a pleasant radiance. At times, I sensed his gaze upon me, yet I stayed mute, unprepared to explore the intricacies of the prior night's disclosures. He appeared more relaxed, more authentic, and I was reluctant to disturb the delicate tranquility we had achieved. Ultimately, he shattered the quiet, his voice imbued with appreciation. "Thank you for last night. Mother, I required that." His susceptibility astonished me. "There is no necessity for you to express gratitude towards me." Daniel, the initial one, provided reassurance. "I will consistently support you regardless of the circumstances." He nodded, yet his stare remained, silently questioning, reflecting the unexpressed feelings I had been contending with. His eyes have a profundity and intensity that beyond the customary solace of our moms. Sunday transpired without incident. Ryan withdrew to his room, engrossed in homework and video games, while I occupied myself with domestic tasks. However, the dynamic between us had imperceptibly altered. The change was ethereal, characterized by a subtle tension and an unvoiced recognition of the profound connection that developed as day turned to twilight. I reflected about Daniel, his evolution from boyhood to early adulthood, and the intimacy we experienced the previous night. Upon reflection, I saw that my sentiments for him had transformed, surpassing the confines of mother affection. That evening, following dinner, we reclined on the couch to see a film. The space was poorly illuminated, with the flickering pictures on the screen projecting moving shadows onto the walls. We remained largely silent, satisfied in one another's company. As the film advanced, I became distinctly aware of his closeness, particularly as his arm grazed mine with each slight movement. My pulse raced as I attempted to concentrate on the film, however the tension between us was unmistakable. In a hushed symphony of unexpressed feelings midway through the film, Ryan moved closer, his arm making contact with mine. This time, he remained still. The heat of his skin on mine elicited a tremor of consciousness within me. I looked at him, and our gazes intersected. His stare exhibited a renewed intensity, mirroring the feelings I had endeavored to hide during the day. Instinctively, I extended my hand and grasped his, our fingers interlacing. He acquiesced, softly gripping my hand as his thumb traced a deliberate circle on my skin. The modest act elicited a flutter in my heart, a feeling both recognizable and thrillingly novel. We remained in that position for some time, hands intertwined in a subdued illumination, a quiet reflection of the evolving nature of our connection. It was a pivotal moment, an instance of implicit comprehension that beyond the confines of our familial responsibilities. I was uncertain about the future, although I saw that circumstances were evolving and Ryan was no longer only my son. He was a being beyond mere description, someone for whom I harbored profound affection. The film concluded, however, we stayed on the couch, oblivious to the rolling credits. I rested my head on his shoulder, sensing the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest as he inhaled and exhaled. It was a little gesture, yet it seemed very personal, a tacit recognition of the burgeoning link between us, Mom. Ryan murmured, his voice scarcely perceptible. I am genuinely pleased that you are present. His remarks, uncomplicated yet significant, resonated with the emotions in my own heart. I was pleased by his presence, appreciative of this unforeseen proximity, this newly discovered intimacy that was simultaneously daunting and invigorating. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I felt genuinely alive. There existed no ambiguity, no remorse, only the unequivocal reality of our affection. It was a love forged from years of mutual trust and understanding that transcended familial bonds. It was a love that seemed as instinctive as respiration, as unavoidable as dawn. We reclined in the aftermath of our mutual ardor, the quiet interrupted solely by the gentle cadence of our breathing. Ryan eventually averted his gaze, examining mine with a tenderness that endeared him to me. Are we in a satisfactory state? He inquired, his voice a soft whisper in the darkness. I nodded, momentarily speechless, my heart brimming with ineffable feelings. Indeed, I murmured, my voice laden with unexpressed verities. Are we in agreement? Later that evening, when the leftovers of dinner were removed and the home descended into serene quietude, Ryan and I situated ourselves on the back porch, surrounded by the calm of the night. The air was brisk and refreshing, the stars shimmering like jewels dispersed throughout the expansive sky. After weeks, I had a sensation of liberation, an alleviation of the burden that had been weighing upon me. Our conversation was minimal, yet verbal communication seemed superfluous. Merely being in proximity to him, partaking in the serene splendor of the night, sufficed. There was an absence of haste and pressure, only a serene calm that conveyed significant meaning. Whatever this relationship included, it was developing naturally, and I was satisfied to allow it to flourish at its own tempo. He grasped my hand, his touch radiating warmth that coursed through me like wildfire. I smiled, softly squeezing his hand, and we remained seated. Our connection evolved into a lovely entity that satisfied an unrecognized need. It was not until a rainy afternoon in late October that the complete understanding of our love enveloped me. The sky was a tapestry of tumultuous grays, with rain producing a consistent percussion on the windows. Ryan and I were nestled on the couch in the living room, a fire blazing in the hearth, emanating a warm radiance throughout the space. Enveloped in a blanket, the warmth of the fire and the intimacy of our proximity formed a sanctuary against the tempest outside. Ryan was lying on me, his head on my shoulder, and I absent-mindedly stroked my fingers through his hair, relishing the serene closeness of the moment. The rain-soaked windows obscured the external environment, fostering a feeling of isolation, as if we inhabited our own distinct cosmos. I sensed his breathing becoming slow and steady, and I recognized, without verbal communication, that he was experiencing the same transformation in our connection, the same irresistible attraction towards something deeper. He raised his head, his gaze locking with mine, and in that instant, the essence of our love reverberated between us. It was not only love, it was a link that transcended our conventional roles, a connection that had developed into something profound and irrefutable. Mother, he said, his voice laden with love. I stayed mute, anticipating his continuation, certain that his forthcoming words would alter everything. I love you, he admitted, extending his hand to grasp mine, not alone due to your maternal role, but because of your essence, all that constitutes you. I am uncertain if this sentiment is appropriate or misguided, yet I am unable to resist it. His words enveloped me like a warm wave, saturating the room with a love that caused my heart to ache in a profoundly beautiful manner. I had perceived his emotions, but seeing him articulate them and recognize their profundity rendered them all the more tangible. I grasped his hand, sensing the consistent cadence of his beating under my fingertips. "Daniel," I said, my voice quivering slightly, "I reciprocate your affection. I have always cherished you, but this situation is distinct." He nodded, his gaze probing mine for affirmation, for a response to the unarticulated inquiry that lingered between us. "I am uncertain about the meaning of this," I persisted. "However, I am aware that my sentiments remain unchanged, and it does not seem erroneous to me. It appears appropriate." A gentle grin graced his lips, and my heart surged with an unprecedented thrill. He muttered, "I am pleased you feel that way, as I am uncertain how I would respond if you did not." I extended my hand, gently stroking his cheek, sensing the warmth of his flesh against my fingertips. "We will resolve this issue." I provided him reassurance collectively. We were silent for a brief interval. Our eyes met, accompanied just by the soft patter of rain and the crackling of the fire, rendering words superfluous. We had articulated all necessary points. We were both aware of our feelings, and we recognized their authenticity and unmistakable nature. Gradually, Ryan inclined towards me, his gaze fixed on mine, and softly, with trepidation, he kissed me. It was a gentle, affectionate kiss imbued with the love and need we had repressed for an extended period. There was no stress or haste, only a genuine manifestation of our profound bond. As he withdrew, his eyes brimmed with emotion, and I realized we had reached a pivotal juncture, an irrevocable moment. Nevertheless, rather than trepidation, I had a profound tranquility, a conviction that here was our destined place. He drew me nearer, enveloping me in his arms, and we embraced while the rain persisted, the fire illuminating our connection with a warm radiance. I was aware that any issues that arose would be confronted together. The remainder of the evening was a haze of tender caresses, hushed dialogues, and delicate kisses. We did not address the future or the ramifications of our newly discovered affection. The present was paramount, the shared closeness of that moment as the rain persisted in its peaceful serenity. I was astonished by the rapid transformation of our connection. Ryan had matured from a boy into a man, and in this transformation, our relationship had developed into an unforeseen, exquisite connection that suited us perfectly. That night, Ryan entered my room once more, but this time without any reluctance. He ascended into bed alongside me, encircling me with his arms, drawing me near. It lacked the reassuring hug characteristic of a mother and son. It was the embrace of equals, two connected spirits. I reclined my head on his chest, attuned to the consistent cadence of his heartbeat, a harmonious expression of affection and satisfaction. I experienced a tranquility I had not felt in years, a wholeness I had not known. I was absent. Regardless of its nature or transformation, I was prepared for it. Ryan and I had always shared a strong bond, but now we had evolved into something more, something that eluded categorization. We were partners and lovers, two souls united by a love that beyond conventional limits as I fell asleep. A smile graced my lips. It was irrational, I acknowledged, yet it was exhilarating.